Okay, let's be real. If you've spent more than a day in Poland, you've felt it. You're on the tram, you're walking through a galeria, or maybe you're just waiting for a train. And then it happens. That long, slow, unmistakable gaze. The famous or infamous Polish stare. Now, if you're from a culture where avoiding eye contact with strangers is the #1 rule of public life, like I am, that intensity can be unsettling. You immediately check your jacket for stains, wonder if your fly is down or if you've somehow insulted someone's babcia, grandmother, just by existing. But here's the thing, and this is what I've learned living here. That look is usually not personal, and it's almost never meant to be aggressive. It's actually a fascinating, subtle reflection of Polish history, manners, and a unique approach to shared public space. So today, we're breaking down the 4 real reasons why Poles are Olympic champions at people watching. Trust me, the truth is far more interesting than you think. Let's dive in. The first and biggest reason comes down to differing norms about how we share space. In the file that inspired this video, we call this the culture of observation, and it's a huge point of confusion for newcomers. In many Western countries, the social contract is this. When you enter a public space, you put up an invisible wall. You look down, you look at your phone, you look past people. You give strangers a polite split-second glance and then immediately look away. That quick avoidance is the sign of respect for their privacy. In Poland? Not so much. Here, people are simply more comfortable looking directly at their surroundings and, yes, at the people in them. What you perceive as a hostile, long stare is often just a sustained moment of observation or people watching. Think about it. When you're waiting for a bus, what do you look at? In Poland, the answer is often whatever is in front of me. And if that's a person, they look at the person. There's no inherent assumption that looking equals wanting to engage or challenge or judge. It's just how you register what's going on. The second part of this is the lack of the polite glance away. When a Pole's eyes meet yours, they don't always snap their head back immediately. They might hold that gaze for another second or two while their brain processes the visual information. And that extra beat is what feels so intense to an outsider. I remember my first time on a crowded Warsaw tram. I caught the eye of an older gentleman. I did my polite glance away maneuver. But when I looked back 10 seconds later, he was still looking, just calmly taking in the scene. I realized then that I wasn't the star of his movie. I was just a piece of scenery he was interested in. He wasn't staring at me, he was staring through me, just deep in thought. So, next time you feel it, try to reframe it. You're not being targeted, you're just existing in a culture that treats public observation as a completely neutral activity. It's a culture of intense and thorough people watching. Now, this is crucial. The intensity of the stare is magnified 100 times by what we call the Polish serious face. You see people on the street and they often look stern, deep in thought, or just incredibly serious. Outsiders often translate this expression as unfriendly, angry, or sad. But culturally, it is none of those things. It is the default neutral expression. In Poland, a smile is a genuine earned social currency. It is reserved for a conversation with a friend, a funny moment, or a specific interaction. Smiling at a stranger for no reason is highly unusual. Why? Well, historically and culturally, if you smiled at a stranger, it meant one of 3 things. You confused them with someone you knew, you were being ironic or laughing at them, you were flirting or inviting a connection. None of those are the default public behavior. So, the moment you combine a long gaze, segment 1, with a serious, non-smiling face, it feels like a hostile stare to someone from, say, the United States, where cashiers are practically required to smile at you. If you're a Pole watching this, you're probably nodding right now. This is just how life is. But for my fellow expats, here's a tip. When you look at a serious Polish face, mentally translate that expression to the equivalent of an empty expression or daydreaming look in your own culture. It's the face people make when they are simply thinking while waiting for the next thing to happen. The lack of a smile is simply efficiency. Why waste energy on facial muscles if you're not talking to anyone? It's a very practical, no-nonsense approach to public life. It's not rudeness, it's just efficiency. And I love that about Polish culture. To really understand the seriousness and the observation, we have to talk about history, specifically the time leading up to and during the communist era. Poland's history is defined by periods of intense difficulty, occupations, wars, and decades of living under a communist regime where trust was a luxury. When you live in an environment where things are uncertain, where information is controlled, and where you couldn't always know who you could trust, you develop certain survival instincts. One of those instincts is vigilance. People learned to be hyper-aware of their surroundings. You needed to discreetly size up your environment, look at people's faces for genuine emotion, and listen for anything that might be out of the ordinary. Reservedness and a guarded expression became a protective layer. Smiling in public, that could be seen as showing too much happiness or contentment, which might draw unwanted attention from authorities or nosy neighbors. Keeping a neutral, stoic face was a way of blending in and staying safe. Now, decades later, the oppressive regimes are gone. But these deeply ingrained habits, the quiet observation, the serious demeanor, the reluctance to expose emotion to strangers, have persisted as a cultural default, especially among older generations. So, that intense observation you feel is a long, quiet echo of a time when paying attention to details and keeping your guard up was simply necessary for life. It's an inherited trait of caution and deep observation. Finally, if you're an expat or tourist, sometimes the stare is just curiosity, plain and simple. While cities like Warsaw, Kraków, and Gdańsk are incredibly international now, many smaller towns and even some neighborhoods still have a relatively homogeneous population. If you look visibly foreign, dress in a way that's different from the local style, or are speaking a non-Slavic language loudly, you become a focal point of observation. This curiosity is often completely benign. It's not necessarily a negative judgment, it's just a fascination with something new or different. It's human nature to look at what stands out. I found that older women, in particular, are the most frequent starers. They tend to feel fewer social barriers about staring, and it's almost always non-malicious. They are simply taking you in, figuring out your story, or maybe judging your coat, but in a totally harmless way. Also, consider the specific context. Are you on a crowded bus? People look for free seats. Are you carrying something unusual like a giant suitcase or a musical instrument? People are curious. The look might be directed at the thing more than the person. The best way to handle it, as we noted in the document, is actually quite simple. Continue what you're doing. Don't let it interrupt your focus. If you feel the need to break the tension, make brief eye contact, maybe a very slight nod, and then naturally look away. Never feel obligated to give a big, wide smile. That can just confuse things. So there you have it. The next time you're in Poland and you feel that famous gaze, remember the 4 points we covered. It's a culture of observation, not aggression. It's accompanied by the neutral, serious face, not anger. It's often a subtle echo of historical vigilance. And sometimes it's just plain curiosity. Understanding this cultural context is one of the most important things you can learn when traveling or living in Poland. It allows you to relax, stop worrying about your fly, and appreciate that this intensity is just a subtle, fascinating aspect of a truly resilient and deeply thoughtful culture. Thanks for tuning in to this deep dive. If you found this explanation helpful, and if it helped you finally understand why that person on the tram was staring at your socks for 5 minutes, please let us know. Don't forget to smash that like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people who are curious about Polish culture. Subscribe to The Poland for more insider tips and cultural breakdowns, and share this video with any friend who is planning a trip here or who just moved to the country. We love hearing your stories. Let us know in the comments, what was your most awkward stare moment? Dzięki, and we'll see you in the next video.